I was on a video call with 12 investors when Derek Stanford, the VP's son, pointed at the camera and screamed at me to bow. Bow, and thank him for not firing me sooner. My hands shook as I stood, my face burning with humiliation. I lowered my head while tears blurred my vision. Thank you, Derek, for not firing me sooner. The words tasted like poison. The investors watched in horrified silence. My phone was recording everything. I sent it to their compliance team immediately. By noon, the $30 million deal was frozen. 2 weeks earlier, my life looked completely different. I walked into TechVantage Consulting's Seattle office at 7:30 that Monday morning, carrying my usual vanilla latte and feeling good about where I stood professionally. 4 years with the company had earned me 2 promotions, 17 closed deals, and a reputation as someone who got things done. At 28, I was the youngest senior project manager in our division, and I had worked incredibly hard for that title. My current project was the biggest of my career. We were preparing the investor pitch for the data flow systems acquisition, a deal worth $30 million that would transform our company's position in the tech consulting market. I had spent 6 months building the financial models, coordinating with our legal team, and crafting a presentation that would convince 3 major investment firms to back us. My team of 5 people trusted my leadership, and I took that responsibility seriously. That morning, I arrived early to review materials before our 9 o'clock strategy meeting. Jordan Chen. Wait, I need to use a different name. Jordan Walsh, my junior associate and the newest member of our team, was already at his desk when I passed by. Morning, Brianna. Big day today. Jordan was 24, fresh out of graduate school, eager and hard-working. I had been mentoring him for 3 months, and he reminded me of myself when I first started. Hungry to learn, willing to stay late, genuinely excited about the work. Big day is right. Make sure you have those market comparisons ready for the meeting. Already done. Sent them to your inbox 20 minutes ago. I smiled. That was why I liked working with Jordan. He anticipated needs instead of waiting to be told. My direct supervisor, Patricia Huang, valued my work and had been instrumental in my career growth. She was the director of strategic partnerships, a brilliant strategist in her mid-40s who had taught me everything about navigating corporate politics while maintaining integrity. We had a standing coffee meeting every Monday at 8:15, and I headed to her office looking forward to discussing the week ahead. But that morning, Patricia seemed distracted. She kept glancing at her computer screen, her usual warmth replaced by something that looked like worry. Everything okay? She hesitated before answering. We are getting a new VP of Strategic Development. He starts today. That is great. We could use more leadership bandwidth with all these big deals coming through. Patricia's expression made me pause. His name is Derek Stanford. He is Thomas's son. Thomas Stanford was our CEO and founder, a visionary who had built TechVantage from a 3-person startup into a 200-employee firm over 15 years. I respected him immensely. The name connection took a second to register. Wait, the CEO's son? Yes. Derek just finished his MBA. He has tried running 2 startups that did not work out. This is his first real corporate role. I processed that information carefully. Nepotism was not uncommon in family-owned companies, but it always created uncomfortable dynamics. Still, I believed in giving people a chance to prove themselves. Maybe he will bring fresh perspectives. Patricia looked at me directly. Brianna, you have worked so hard on the data flow deal. Just be careful. Document everything. Her warning seemed overly cautious at the time. I nodded politely, but did not really understand why she looked so concerned. The 9 o'clock meeting changed my perspective immediately. Derek Stanford walked into the conference room like he already owned it. He was in his mid-30s, wearing an expensive suit that fit too perfectly, his dark hair styled with too much product. He had the kind of confident smile that came from never facing real consequences. "Good morning, team. I am Derek Stanford, and I will be leading strategic development moving forward. I have been reviewing all our active deals, and I have some thoughts about how we can improve our approach." He had been with the company for approximately 3 hours. I had prepared a presentation walking through our data flow pitch strategy, the culmination of months of work. I was 3 slides in when Derek interrupted. "Actually, sweetheart, let me jump in here. I think what you are trying to say is that we need to position ourselves as disruptors in the market integration space." He proceeded to restate my exact strategy using different words and taking credit for the framework I had developed. When I tried to clarify that this approach had been in development since January, he talked over me. These are the kinds of insights I bring from my entrepreneurial background. Fresh eyes on old problems. Around the table, my team members exchanged uncomfortable glances but said nothing. Jordan looked down at his laptop. Patricia remained silent. Derek spent the next 40 minutes inserting himself into every aspect of the deal I had been leading. He questioned my timeline, which was based on careful coordination with 4 different departments. He suggested changes to financial projections without understanding the underlying data. He made it clear, without directly saying it, that he was now in charge. When the meeting ended, I approached Patricia in the hallway. "He just took credit for 6 months of my work. I know." She lowered her voice. "Brianna, Derek has a pattern. He worked in our Boston office for 8 months, 2 years ago before the startup thing. 2 senior people left that division after conflicts with him. HR complaints were filed, but nothing happened. He is the CEO's son. So what am I supposed to do? Document everything, keep detailed emails, copy me when appropriate, and try to work with him, even when it is hard." I went back to my desk feeling something I had not felt at TechVantage before. Worried about my own position despite doing excellent work. That afternoon, I stayed late to review all my materials for the 100th time, making sure everything was perfect. I was alone on our floor, the office quiet, except for the hum of computers and the distant sounds of the cleaning crew starting their rounds. Derek appeared in my doorway at 7:30. I had not heard him approach. "Burning the midnight oil, I see. Just making sure we are ready for the investor prep meeting tomorrow." He walked into my cubicle without invitation, standing too close. "You know, Brianna, you are very dedicated. I appreciate that about you." "Thank you." I shifted in my chair, putting more distance between us. "Though I have to say, I have been reviewing your work, and I found some concerning errors in the financial models." My stomach dropped. "What errors?" "Just some inconsistencies. Nothing we can't fix." He smiled in a way that did not reach his eyes. "But it makes me wonder if maybe this deal is a bit over your head. These high-pressure situations are not for everyone. I had checked those models dozens of times. Our CFO had reviewed them. They were solid. Can you show me specifically what you found? We will go over it later. I just think you should know that I am watching the quality of work coming out of this team. We cannot afford mistakes at this level." He left without providing any details, leaving me sitting there with sudden, unwelcome doubt creeping in. I stayed until midnight that night, rechecking every number, every formula, every assumption. I found nothing wrong, but the seed of anxiety had been planted, and I went home wondering if Derek Stanford was actually trying to help the deal succeed, or if Patricia's warning meant something far more serious than I had initially understood. The sabotage started the next morning, and it was not subtle. I arrived at 8 o'clock for our 9 o'clock investor prep meeting, only to discover that the key financial projection files I needed were completely gone from our shared drive. 6 weeks of detailed modeling, sensitivity analyses, and scenario planning had vanished overnight. My team arrived to find me frantically searching backup folders while trying not to panic visibly. "Jordan, did you move the data flow financial models?" "No, they should be in the strategic projects folder where they always are. They are not there. Nothing is there. The entire subfolder is gone." 3 other team members confirmed they could not access the files either. We had investors arriving in less than an hour, and our core materials had disappeared. The panic was spreading across the team when Derek walked in, looking remarkably calm for someone whose major deal preparation was falling apart. "What is going on?" "The financial models are gone. All of them." I kept my voice steady despite my racing heart. "How does that happen?" He looked around at my team. "This is exactly the kind of carelessness I was worried about. I have backups on my personal drive. I can pull most of it, but we are going to be tight on time." "Always have backups," Derek said, as if this were a teaching moment rather than a crisis. Good lesson for the team. I spent the next 40 minutes reconstructing what I could while Jordan helped reformatted slides. We pulled it together just barely, finishing 8 minutes before the investors arrived. The meeting went reasonably well, though I could see the investors noticed our slight disorganization at the start. After they left, Derek gathered the team. "That was almost a disaster. We need to be more careful about file management going forward." He looked directly at me. "Brianna, you especially need to have better backup systems." I wanted to point out that files do not just delete themselves, that someone with administrative access would have had to remove them. But Patricia's warning echoed in my head. Document everything. That afternoon, I sent a detailed email to Patricia describing what happened, including timestamps showing when the files had last been accessed and when they disappeared. I copied everything to my personal email account. The credit theft escalated over the next week. Derek started presenting my work as his own in every meeting. He would take my reports, change the formatting, add his name as primary author, and present them to senior leadership. In front of CEO Thomas Stanford during our Thursday executive briefing, Derek presented the entire strategy framework I had developed, as if it were his original thinking. This approach really leverages our core competencies while positioning us uniquely in the market. I have been working with the team to refine these concepts. Thomas, a distinguished man in his early 60s with silver hair and sharp eyes, nodded approvingly. "This is excellent work, Derek. Exactly the kind of strategic thinking we need at the leadership level." I sat 3 chairs down the table, invisible. When I tried to add context about the data sources supporting these strategies, Derek cut me off smoothly. "Brianna, I will handle the strategic overview. You can address tactical details if we need them." Patricia caught my eye across the table, her expression sympathetic but offering no intervention. After the meeting, she pulled me into an empty office. "I know that was your work. Then why did you not say something?" "Brianna, pick your battles. He is untouchable right now. Focus on doing excellent work. The right people will eventually see the truth." But that was not how corporate politics actually worked, and we both knew it. The right people saw what was presented to them, and Derek was ensuring he got credit for my contributions while systematically undermining my credibility. The setup came 2 weeks before the final investor call. Derek scheduled a meeting with one of our key clients, Data Tech Solutions, whose integration needs were central to the acquisition pitch. He sent me a calendar invitation for 2 in the afternoon on Wednesday. Wednesday morning, I got a text from Jordan at 1:15. Are you coming to the data tech meeting? What meeting? With Derek and the data tech executives. It started at 1. My invitation said 2. I checked my calendar. The meeting notice clearly showed 2 o'clock, but when I called Derek's assistant, she confirmed the meeting had always been scheduled for 1. I arrived at 1:40, flustered and apologetic. 3 data tech executives sat in our conference room looking distinctly annoyed. Derek wore an expression of disappointed patience. Brianna, glad you could join us. We have been filling them in on your usual high standards of work. The way he emphasized usual made it clear what he meant. Over the next 20 minutes, I tried to recover, but the clients had already been told a story about me being difficult to work with, often unprepared, and struggling with the complexity of this deal. We were assured this acquisition would be handled by your top people, one of the executives said, looking at Derek rather than me. And it is. Derek smiled. Brianna is part of the team, but I am personally overseeing every aspect to ensure quality. I had to sit there while he positioned himself as the safety net protecting clients from my incompetence. A deal I had originated, developed, and nurtured for 6 months was being framed as something I was barely capable of supporting. After the clients left, Derek did not even pretend. You need to be more professional. Showing up late makes us all look bad. The meeting invitation said 2. That is not what my calendar shows. Maybe you need to be more careful about reading your emails. I went back to my desk and checked every version of that meeting notice I could find. In my email, in my calendar, in the original invitation, it said 2 o'clock. But in the company's scheduling system, it now showed 1. Someone with administrative access had changed it after sending it to me. That night, I drafted an email to HR, documenting the incident, including screenshots. But before I sent it, I received an email that made my hands shake. Subject: Formal Performance Review. Brianna, this is to inform you that a formal complaint has been filed regarding your professional conduct. The concerns include missed deadlines, unprofessional behavior in client meetings, and conflicts with team members. You are being placed on a 30-day performance improvement plan effective immediately. You will report directly to Derek Stanford, who will evaluate your progress weekly. Please see the attached documentation for specific areas requiring improvement. The attached document was 3 pages of fabricated examples, meetings I had supposedly missed that had never been scheduled, team members I had supposedly conflicted with who had actually praised my leadership, deadlines I had supposedly blown that I had actually met early. Every accusation was a lie, but they were detailed lies, carefully constructed to paint a picture of someone whose work was deteriorating. My access to certain systems was restricted immediately. I could no longer see executive-level communications. I could not access some of the client files I had created. I was being systematically isolated from the deal I had built while being set up to take the blame if it failed. Jordan stopped by my desk late that evening. Everyone had gone home except us. This is not right. Everyone knows you are the reason this deal exists. Then why is no one saying anything? Because we are all scared. 2 people in Boston lost their jobs after crossing Derek. Another person in finance got reassigned to a nothing role after questioning him in a meeting. He looked genuinely distressed. I am really sorry, Brianna. I wish I was brave enough to speak up, but I have student loans, and my girlfriend and I just signed a lease. I understand. And I meant it. Jordan was 24 years old. I could not ask him to risk his career for me. But I reached into my desk drawer and pulled out my phone, opening the voice recording app I had started using. I am documenting everything now. Every conversation, Every meeting, every email. That is smart. He hesitated. For what it is worth, Derek does not actually understand most of the work you did. He is using your analysis, but he could not explain the methodology if someone pushed him on it. The investors are going to figure that out. I hope you are right. But as I drove home that night, I was not sure hope was enough. Derek had power, protection, and a willingness to destroy anyone who threatened his unearned position. I had documentation and truth, which felt like very weak weapons against nepotism and institutional backing. I almost quit that night. I sat in my apartment, resignation letter half written on my laptop, seriously considering walking away from a company I had given 4 years of my life to. But something made me pause. If I left, Derek won. And more importantly, he would do this to the next person, and the next, and the next. Someone had to make the cost of his behavior higher than the benefit of his last name. I deleted the resignation letter and went to bed. The investor call was in 2 weeks. I did not know exactly what I was going to do, but I knew I would be there. The isolation became complete over the next 10 days. Patricia stopped responding to my messages entirely. I later learned through Jordan that Derek had called Patricia into a private meeting and made it clear, support me or lose her own position. She chose survival, and I could not really blame her. She had 2 kids in college and a mortgage. Other colleagues who had been friendly started avoiding me in the hallways. The lunch group I used to join suddenly had meetings that conflicted with their usual time. When I entered the break room, conversations would stop. People would suddenly remember they needed to be somewhere else. Only Jordan still talked to me, but even he did it carefully, checking to make sure Derek was not around. This is like watching a mob movie. Everyone knows what is happening is wrong, but nobody wants to be the one to say it. Welcome to corporate America. When the boss's son decides you are a problem, what are you going to do? I honestly did not know. The performance improvement plan was a joke, but it was a documented joke. Derek had created an official paper trail suggesting I was failing at my job. In 30 days, he could recommend my termination, and HR would have documentation to support it. Meanwhile, he was making sure those 30 days were impossible. He assigned me workload that would normally go to entire teams, a full market analysis of competing firms, due in 2 days, a revised financial model incorporating 15 new variables, due in 3 days, a comprehensive risk assessment that would typically take 2 weeks, due in 4 days. When I delivered them, working 16 and 18-hour days, he would find microscopic errors that did not actually matter, or sometimes did not exist at all. In our weekly coaching sessions, which were really just opportunities for him to break me down, he would go through my work line by line. This analysis lacks depth. Your conclusion does not account for market volatility. Your formatting is inconsistent. Did you even proofread this? I had proofread it 6 times. The analysis was thorough, and the conclusions were sound. But Derek was not interested in accuracy. He was interested in maintaining a narrative of my incompetence. Brianna, I am trying to help you succeed here, but you are making it very difficult. Maybe this level of strategic work just is not where your strengths lie. What he was really doing was grinding me down psychologically, trying to make me doubt my own abilities. And the terrifying thing was, it was starting to work. When you hear often enough that your work is not good enough, even when you know objectively that it is, a small voice starts to whisper, "What if they are right?" I started triple-checking things I would normally be confident about. I second-guessed my own judgment. I volunteered less in meetings because I was afraid of being wrong. I was becoming exactly the uncertain, diminished version of myself that Derek's narrative described. The personal attacks started in the third week. Derek began commenting on aspects of my life that had nothing to do with work. "So, Brianna, you seeing anyone? Or are you one of those women who is too focused on career to have a personal life? That is not really work appropriate. I am just trying to get to know my team better. No need to be so defensive." He smiled like we were friends having a casual conversation. "You know, that is part of your problem. You are very cold. People find you hard to connect with." Other team members sat in uncomfortable silence during these exchanges. Derek was creating an atmosphere where boundaries did not exist, where he could say whatever he wanted and frame any objection as me being difficult. In another meeting, he made a joke about me being uptight and needing to relax more. When I did not laugh, he said, "See? No sense of humor. That is what I mean about being unlikable." I started keeping my voice recorder running during every interaction with him. I had hours of audio documenting his behavior, his credit theft, his impossible demands, his personal attacks. But I was not sure what I could do with it. HR was not going to act against the CEO's son based on recordings they might claim were made without consent. The recordings were, for me, proof that I was not crazy, that this was really happening. 3 days before the investor call, Derek sent an email that felt like a physical blow. Subject: Team role clarification for data flow final presentation. Team, as we prepare for our final investor call, I want to clarify roles to ensure the smoothest possible presentation. Given some performance concerns, Brianna will have a minimal role in the final presentation. She will primarily provide administrative support, including coordinating logistics, managing documentation, and taking notes during the call. Derek will be presenting all strategic and financial content. Please direct any questions about the deal to Derek directly. 4 years of work, 6 months of building this specific deal, my financial models, my client relationships, my strategic framework, all being taken away and reassigned to someone who barely understood the content. The humiliation was public and complete. Everyone in the company now knew I had been demoted to essentially a secretary role on my own deal. I was expected to order the catering, book the conference room, set up the video equipment, and take notes while Derek presented work I had created. That night, I sat in my car in the parking garage and cried harder than I had cried since I was a child. I felt utterly defeated, humiliated, and helpless. I had done everything right. I had worked hard, produced excellent results, acted professionally even when Derek was acting like a tyrant, and it had not mattered at all. I considered not even showing up for the investor call. Why subject myself to sitting there while Derek took credit for my work in front of the most important audience possible? But even in my lowest moment, I knew I could not do that. I needed to see this through. That weekend, I reviewed all the documentation I had accumulated. Emails showing Derek taking credit for my work. Calendar invitations proving he had set me up to fail. Voice recordings of him making inappropriate comments and impossible demands. Screenshots of the fabricated performance improvement plan. I had evidence, but I did not have power. The company was not going to act on it. HR had already chosen their side by creating the performance improvement plan based on Derek's false accusations. Then I looked at something I had noticed during our prep meetings but had not fully considered: the investors themselves. Richard Holloway from Apex Capital Partners had asked several pointed questions during our last meeting. He had looked skeptical when Derek stumbled through explanations. He had specifically asked me to clarify technical points that Derek could not answer. The investors did not know Derek was the CEO's son. They just knew he was presenting himself as the lead on this deal. And investors at that level did not stay wealthy by backing incompetent people or unethical companies. I went to bed Sunday night with a plan forming. It was risky and possibly career-ending, but my career at TechVantage was already over whether I acted or not. Derek was going to fire me at the end of my 30-day performance improvement plan. That was obvious. Monday morning, the day before the investor call, Derek summoned me to his office. He looked nervous, which I had not seen before. His usual arrogance had a brittle edge. Tomorrow is the most important call of this quarter. I need to make sure you understand your role. Administrative support. I have read the email. Right. You are there to take notes and defer to me on any questions. He paused and I realized he was actually scared. These investors are tough. If they ask you anything technical, you just say I can address that better than you can. You want me to defer to you even on questions I know the answers to, especially on those. I am the face of this deal. They need to have confidence in my leadership. Your leadership. The leadership that came from 6 months of my work that you are presenting as your own. His eyes narrowed. Are we going to have a problem tomorrow, Brianna? No, Derek. No problem. Good. Because if this deal falls apart, I need to know who is responsible. And given your performance issues lately, well, let's just make sure we are both clear on roles. He was already preparing to blame me if his presentation failed. He had spent weeks building a paper trail, suggesting I was incompetent, so that when he inevitably revealed his own incompetence to the investors, he could point to me as the problem. I left his office and went back to my desk. I pulled out my phone and checked that I had enough storage space for a long recording. Then I sent a carefully worded email to myself, documenting exactly what Derek had just told me to do. Pretend he was the expert and hide the fact that I had done the actual work. That night, I prepared. I reviewed every detail of the financial models I had created, making sure I could explain them if needed. I charged my phone fully and tested the recording app. I looked up the compliance departments for all 3 investment firms, with Richard Holloway's Apex Capital Partners at the top of my list. I did not sleep much. I kept thinking about that moment when Derek would present my work as his own, about the humiliation I was expected to accept silently, about every person who had been hurt by someone with power and no accountability. By morning, I was calm. I put on my most professional suit, did my makeup carefully, and drove to the office. The investor call was scheduled for 10 o'clock. I arrived at 8:30. Derek was already there, pacing in his office, going over slides. When he saw me, he called me in. We are going to crush this. Just remember what we talked about yesterday. Let me handle everything. I nodded and left without speaking. I set up the conference room, tested the video connection, and made sure all the materials were ready. At 9:45, the other executives started arriving. CEO Thomas Stanford came in, looking proud of his son. The CFO, the general counsel, 2 other VPs. They were all there to watch Derek present the biggest deal of the quarter. At 9:55, I sat down at the far end of the conference table, my phone in my notebook, recording app already running. The video call connected, and 12 faces appeared on screen. Richard Holloway was in the center square, his silver hair and sharp suit projecting authority. Good morning, everyone. Let us get started. Derek began his presentation, and it was immediately clear to me that he did not truly understand the material. He could read the slides I had created, but when he tried to add his own commentary, he used buzzwords without substance. He talked about synergies and market disruption without explaining what that actually meant in concrete terms. 10 minutes in, Richard asked his first question. Can you walk us through the valuation methodology in more detail? Derek froze for just a second, before launching into a vague explanation that did not actually address the question. Richard's expression remained neutral, but I saw him make a note. The presentation continued. Derek stumbled through the financial projections, getting confused about his own slides because they were not actually his slides. Another investor asked about market analysis assumptions, and Derek's answer contradicted data from earlier in the presentation. I watched it unravel in real time. The investors were starting to exchange glances. These were sophisticated people who made billion-dollar decisions. They could tell when someone did not know their own material. Richard finally addressed the elephant in the room. "Derek, I notice these financial models are extremely detailed. Can you explain the sensitivity analysis methodology?" "Of course." Derek clicked to a slide that I had spent 3 weeks perfecting. "We used standard market comparison techniques to create these projections." That was not even close to correct. The methodology was far more complex, involving multiple regression analysis and scenario modeling that I had built from scratch. Richard looked directly at me through the camera. "Miss Harper, you built these models originally, is that correct?" Before I could answer, Derek interrupted sharply. "Brianna has been having some performance issues lately. I have spent considerable time correcting errors in her initial analysis." "I see." Richard's tone was neutral, but his eyes were not. "Perhaps we should reschedule after you have had time to review the materials more thoroughly. That was investor speak for this deal is in serious trouble." Richard was essentially saying, "You do not know your own presentation, and we are not comfortable moving forward." Derek's face went red. I could see panic replacing his usual arrogance. The deal was slipping away, and he knew it. And he did exactly what Patricia had warned me he always did. He blamed someone else. "Actually, you know what? We need to address something here." Derek's voice was rising, his composure cracking. "I have been carrying an incompetent team member through this entire process. Brianna has sabotaged this presentation. She has been sabotaging me for weeks." The room went silent. The other executives looked horrified. Thomas Stanford was staring at his son with an expression I could not read. The investors were witnessing a complete professional meltdown. Derek pointed at me through the video camera, his hand shaking. "She is lazy. She is insubordinate. She has no respect for leadership. I have tried to help her improve, but she refuses to do the work properly." He kept going, listing false accusations while his voice got louder and more unhinged. The investors sat frozen, clearly uncomfortable with what they were watching. This was not professional disagreement. This was a man having an emotional breakdown and attacking a subordinate on camera. Thomas tried to intervene. "Derek, perhaps we should take a break and—" "No, Dad. I mean, sir, this needs to be said. She has made this deal nearly impossible with her incompetence and attitude." He had called Thomas Dad in front of investors who did not know they were related. That alone would have been embarrassing, but Derek was too far gone to notice. Richard Holloway's face had shifted from neutral to disgusted. "Gentlemen, I think we need to pause this call. We will be in touch about next steps." "Wait, no." Derek stood up, his face now completely red. "You need to understand what I have been dealing with. Look at her. She is sitting there acting all innocent, but she has been undermining me from day one." He pointed at me again, and I sat perfectly still, my phone recording every word. "Stand up." I did not move. I said, "Stand up, Brianna." Slowly, I stood, my heart pounding so hard I thought everyone could hear it. "Now bow. Bow and thank me for not firing you sooner." The conference room was absolutely silent. 12 investors watched through the camera. 6 executives sat frozen at the table. Derek Stanford, the VP of Strategic Development and son of the CEO, was demanding that I physically bow to him during a business meeting with $30 million at stake. I thought about Patricia's warning to pick my battles. I thought about Jordan apologizing for not being brave enough to speak up. I thought about every person who had been abused by someone with power and no recourse. And I bowed. I lowered my head in apparent submission, feeling the humiliation burn through me. I let tears come because they were real, and I said the words he wanted to hear. "Thank you, Derek, for not firing me sooner." My voice was steady, despite the tears. My phone was capturing everything. The investors' faces showed shock, disgust, discomfort. Thomas Stanford looked like he might be sick. Derek sat back down, finally satisfied that he had put me in my place. Richard Holloway spoke, his voice cold as ice. "We are ending this call now. You will be hearing from us." The screen went black. Derek leaned back in his chair, chest still heaving from his outburst, seemingly unaware that he had just destroyed his own career. I sat down, pulled my phone from my notebook, and stopped the recording. 42 minutes of footage, showing exactly who Derek Stanford was. I opened my email, attached the recording, and began typing. To Richard Holloway, Apex Capital Partners Compliance Department. Subject: Ethical concerns regarding TechVantage leadership and data flow acquisition. Mr. Holloway, I am writing to bring to your attention serious concerns about the leadership and ethics at TechVantage Consulting. Attached is a recording of this morning's investor call, which I believe demonstrates behavior that violates any reasonable standard of workplace conduct and professional ethics. This is not an isolated incident, but part of a pattern of harassment, credit theft, and abuse that I have documented over the past month. I thought you and your compliance team should be aware of the environment and leadership behind the deal you are considering investing $30 million in. I am available to discuss this further and can provide additional documentation if needed. Respectfully, Brianna Harper. I hit send. The timestamp read 10:47 in the morning. Then I packed my things, wrote a brief resignation letter, and prepared to walk out of TechVantage Consulting for the last time. Whatever happened next, at least I had told the truth. Derek left the conference room immediately after the call ended, his face still flushed with satisfaction at having publicly humiliated me. The other executives filed out in uncomfortable silence, nobody making eye contact with me. Thomas Stanford lingered for a moment, looking like he wanted to say something, but then he left too. I sat alone in the conference room, staring at my phone. The email confirmation showed my message had been delivered to Richard Holloway at 10:48. I had no idea if he would actually watch the recording, if his compliance team would care, or if this would make any difference at all. For all I knew, I had just documented my own professional suicide. Jordan appeared in the doorway 30 minutes later, his face pale. "Tell me you recorded that." I nodded, unable to speak yet. Oh, thank God. His relief was visible. "Brianna, that was the most insane thing I have ever witnessed in a professional setting." Derek completely lost it. The investors looked horrified. "I know. What did you do with the recording?" "Sent it to Richard Holloway's compliance team at Apex Capital." Jordan's eyes went wide. "Holy shit. Those guys do not mess around. Apex has a reputation for cutting deals over way less than what we just witnessed. I do not know if it will matter. Derek is the CEO's son." "Yeah, but investors care about where their money goes. And what they just saw was a lawsuit waiting to happen." Jordan sat down across from me. "What are you going to do now?" "I honestly do not know. I have my resignation letter ready. I was planning to just leave." "Do not leave yet. Just wait and see what happens." So I waited. I went back to my desk and tried to look busy while my hands shook and my heart raced. The office had a strange energy, with people whispering in corners and shooting glances toward Derek's office. Word was spreading about what had happened on the call, though nobody knew the full story. At 11:30 my phone rang. "Unknown number," I answered hesitantly. "Miss Harper? This is Richard Holloway from Apex Capital Partners." My heart stopped. "Yes, this is Brianna. I have just finished watching the recording you sent." His voice was controlled, but I could hear the anger underneath. "I need to be very clear with you. What I witnessed on that call was completely unacceptable by any professional standard. The behavior demonstrated by Mr. Stanford constitutes workplace harassment and possibly abuse." I swallowed hard. "Yes, sir. My compliance team is recommending immediate suspension of the data flow deal, pending a full investigation into the leadership and ethics at TechVantage. $30 million is a significant investment, and we do not partner with organizations that tolerate this kind of conduct." He paused, and I heard papers shuffling. "I need to ask you some questions about the financial models and strategic framework presented this morning. Based on Mr. Stanford's presentation and your responses during the call, I suspect there is a significant discrepancy between who did the actual work and who is taking credit for it." For the next 20 minutes, I walked Richard through everything. The real financial methodology I had developed, the market analysis I had conducted, the client relationships I had built, the 6 months of work that Derek had repackaged as his own accomplishment. I explained the fabricated performance improvement plan, the systematic credit theft, the impossible workloads designed to make me fail. Richard listened without interrupting, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When I finished, his response was immediate. "Miss Harper, thank you for your honesty and integrity in coming forward with this information. Our compliance team will be contacting TechVantage's board and legal counsel within the hour. The $30 million commitment is frozen effective immediately. You may also hear from our legal team regarding the hostile work environment we witnessed, as that potentially creates liability issues for any company we partner with." He paused again. "For what it is worth, your financial models were excellent. The work you did on this deal was sophisticated and thorough." Mr. Master Prodis, Trimond. "Stanford's presentation this morning did not do justice to the quality of analysis behind it. Thank you. That means a lot coming from you. I hope TechVantage does the right thing here. But regardless of what they do, know that you demonstrated real courage today." The call ended at 11:58, 2 minutes before noon, exactly as I had told myself that morning. By noon the deal would be frozen, and it was. I sat at my desk trying to process what had just happened. I had expected to be fired, to leave in disgrace, to have Derek's version of events become the official story. Instead, I had just spoken directly to one of the most respected investors in the tech industry, and he had believed me. At 12:15, an emergency executive meeting was called. I was not invited, but the entire office could feel the shift in energy. Senior leaders were rushing toward the executive conference room. Thomas Stanford looked 10 years older as he walked past my desk without acknowledging me. Jordan stopped by at 12:30. Word is spreading fast. Apex Capital froze the deal. 2 of the other investor firms pulled out completely when they heard what happened. The entire $30 million commitment is gone. Oh my God. Derek is in Thomas's office right now. People are saying they can hear yelling through the walls. I felt a strange mix of emotions. Relief that I had been believed, fear about what would happen next, and a tiny spark of satisfaction that Derek's behavior had finally caught up with him. At 1 o'clock, I received an email summoning me to the CEO's office. This was it. I was either about to be fired or about to face some kind of retaliation. I saved all my files to my personal drive, grabbed my phone, and headed upstairs. Thomas Stanford's office was on the top floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Seattle. When I entered, I found not just Thomas, but 3 board members I recognized, and Helen Martinez, our head of HR. Everyone looked grim. "Miss Harper, please sit down." Thomas gestured to a chair. His usual warm demeanor was gone, replaced by something that looked like exhaustion and shame. I sat, my hands folded in my lap, trying to stay calm. "I owe you an apology." Thomas looked directly at me, and I could see the words were difficult for him. "My son has been placed on immediate administrative leave pending an investigation into his conduct. What happened this morning was completely unacceptable, and I am horrified that it occurred under my leadership." One of the board members, a woman in her 60s named Dorothy Chen. "Wait, I cannot use that name." Dorothy Sullivan leaned forward. "We need to understand exactly what has been happening. We have received communication from Apex Capital's compliance team with serious allegations about workplace harassment and ethics violations. We want to hear directly from you." So I told them everything. The credit theft, the sabotage, the impossible workloads, the fabricated performance improvement plan, the systematic isolation. I provided documentation for everything. Emails, calendar invitations, screenshots, voice recordings, beyond just the investor call. Jordan Walsh had also come forward, I learned. After seeing what happened on the call, he had submitted a written statement to HR detailing everything he had witnessed over the past month. His courage in speaking up, despite his fear of retaliation, gave me hope that maybe workplaces could change. As I talked, the board members' expressions shifted from neutral to appalled. Helen from HR looked increasingly uncomfortable as I described how the performance improvement plan had been created based entirely on Derek's false accusations with no investigation or due process. "We have failed you, Miss Harper." Thomas's voice was heavy. "I failed you. My son is my responsibility, and I allowed him to create a hostile environment because I wanted to believe he was capable of this role." Dorothy spoke next. "We will be conducting a full independent investigation, but based on what we have heard today and what Apex Capital witnessed, I think we can already draw some conclusions. This is not acceptable behavior from anyone, let alone someone in a leadership position." She looked at the other board members, who nodded. Effective immediately, Derek Stanford is terminated from TechVantage Consulting for cause. He will receive no severance and no references. The performance improvement plan in your file will be expunged completely, and we would like to offer you a formal settlement that includes financial compensation and a public apology from the company. I sat there stunned. I had expected to be fighting for my job. Instead, Derek was gone, and the company was apologizing to me. Over the next 2 weeks, the independent investigation confirmed everything. 6 other employees came forward with stories about Derek's behavior, people who had been too afraid to speak up before but found courage after watching someone else take the stand. Patricia Huang admitted she had known about the harassment, but failed to report it, and she was asked to resign. The company settled with me for an amount that made my lawyer very happy. They issued a public apology, acknowledging that I had been subjected to harassment and that they had failed in their responsibility to protect me. They implemented new policies about nepotism, workplace conduct, and reporting procedures. But the biggest surprise came 3 weeks after the investor call. Richard Holloway requested a meeting with me personally, not with TechVantage. We met at a coffee shop near my apartment, and he got straight to the point. "Miss Harper, Apex Capital Partners is still interested in the data flow acquisition, but we will only proceed if you are the one leading the deal." I nearly dropped my coffee. What? We invest in people with integrity, not just business plans. What you did took courage. You risked your career to expose unethical behavior and protect the quality of this deal. Those are exactly the qualities we look for in partners. But Derek destroyed the relationship. Derek demonstrated that he was incompetent and abusive. You demonstrated that you are competent and ethical. Those are very different things. He leaned back in his chair. We have reviewed your original financial models in detail. They are sophisticated, realistic, and well-researched. That is the work we want to back, not the inflated projections Derek presented. Over the next month, I rebuilt the deal from the ground up. I corrected the numbers Derek had altered, removing the unrealistic projections and presenting honest, achievable targets. The acquisition was restructured to $22 million instead of $30 million, but it was based on solid analysis rather than wishful thinking. The investors approved the revised proposal unanimously. Richard told me later that they appreciated the integrity of admitting the original numbers had been inflated rather than trying to defend them. The deal closed successfully in early December, and it became one of TechVantage's most profitable acquisitions. I was promoted to VP of Strategic Partnerships, the role Patricia had held. Jordan was promoted to Senior Project Manager, taking over my old position. Together, we rebuilt the team culture around merit, transparency, and accountability. People who had been silent during Derek's reign started speaking up about problems. The office felt different, lighter. Thomas Stanford stepped back from day-to-day operations, bringing in an outside chief operating officer to provide independent leadership. He and I had several conversations in the months that followed, and I saw genuine remorse in him. One afternoon, he asked to speak with me privately. I enabled Derek's behavior for years. I kept thinking that if I just gave him enough opportunities, he would grow into the person I wanted him to be. Instead, I let him hurt people and damage this company I built from nothing. People want to believe the best about their children. That is not an excuse. I prioritized my son's ego over your safety and career, over multiple people's safety and careers. He looked older than his 62 years. I am working with a therapist now, trying to understand how I let things get so bad. And I am establishing policies to make sure this never happens again. True to his word, Thomas created a mentorship program pairing senior leaders with newer employees, with clear guidelines about accountability and evaluation. He established an anonymous reporting system for workplace concerns, managed by an outside firm. He brought in consultants to train all leadership on harassment prevention and ethical conduct. The company was changing, slowly but meaningfully. It was not perfect, but it was better. 6 months after that investor call, I found myself reflecting on everything that had happened. The recording I made was not about revenge, though I would be lying if I said I did not feel satisfaction watching Derek face consequences for his actions. It was about documentation, about creating evidence that could not be dismissed or rewritten. I learned that silence protects abusers, and speaking up protects everyone who comes after you. I learned that power used to humiliate can be turned around and used to liberate. The bow I performed was not submission. It was strategy. I gave Derek exactly what he wanted, and his own satisfaction with my humiliation led him to feel safe enough to fully reveal who he was in front of the people who mattered most. My dignity stayed intact because I knew what I was doing. I was collecting evidence. I was waiting for the right moment. And when that moment came, I acted decisively. The lesson I carry forward is this. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is let someone reveal exactly who they are. Do not interrupt their self-destruction. Just document it, wait for the right audience, and trust that the truth has power. One recording, one email, changed everything. Not just for me, but for everyone Derek would have hurt next. The deal that was supposed to be his triumph became the catalyst for his downfall and my vindication. I now mentor women who reach out to me about workplace harassment. My advice is always the same: document everything, know your worth, and wait for the moment when their own actions expose them. Truth does not always win immediately, but it has a long shelf life. Lies require constant maintenance. Eventually, people like Derek get tired or careless, and that is when documentation becomes power. The $30 million deal became the deal that saved the company's integrity, not because of the money, but because of what happened when someone finally said, "This is not acceptable, and here is proof." Derek never worked in tech again. Word spread quickly in our industry about what happened, and no reputable company would hire him. Last I heard, he was trying to start another venture funded by his father, and I wished both of them well from a distance. Some people learn from their mistakes. Others just find new people to hurt in different contexts. But that was not my concern anymore. I had built the career I deserved, on my own terms. I had a team that trusted me, investors who respected me, and the satisfaction of knowing I had stood up when it mattered. I kept that recording on my phone. I probably always will. Not because I need to watch it, but because it reminds me that speaking truth to power actually works when you are strategic about it. Those who abuse power always underestimate the people they hurt. They think fear equals control. They think humiliation equals victory, and that underestimation becomes their downfall. Every single time. Looking back now, I am grateful for what happened. As strange as that sounds, I am grateful because it taught me that my worth is not determined by people who try to diminish me. I am grateful because it showed me the importance of documentation and timing. I am grateful because it led to real change at a company I care about. But mostly, I am grateful because I learned that courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to act despite fear, because staying silent would hurt more than speaking up. That investor call lasted 42 minutes and changed my entire life. The humiliation was real and painful, but so was the justice that followed. And justice, I learned, is almost always worth the wait. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to document someone's bad behavior to protect yourself? Have you been in a situation where speaking up felt impossible but necessary? What would you do if you were in my position? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Your story might help someone else find the courage to act. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button. It helps more people find these stories and know they are not alone in facing workplace challenges. Subscribe to this channel for more real stories about overcoming adversity and finding justice. And please share this with anyone who might need to hear it. Someone who is facing a difficult situation at work and wondering if speaking up is worth it. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I hope it reminds you that your integrity and truth have power, even when it does not feel like it in the moment. Stay strong, document everything, and trust that the right moment will come. Take care, and remember, those who abuse power always underestimate the people they hurt. Do not let anyone make you doubt your worth.